Welcome to Be Brilliant with Jing Lang, the podcast dedicated to those seeking to excel in every aspect of their lives. Through conversations with her guests, Jing will tease out personal stories, helpful tips, and proven strategies to help you elevate your life and reach your highest potential. Get ready to dive in and discover what it means to be truly brilliant. And now, here's your host, Jing Lang.
Ronald Poon-Affat is an actuary and insurance executive with over 38 years of global experience. Born in Trinidad and educated in London, UK, Ronald has been based out of Brazil since 1997, an honorary member of Brazilian Institute of Actuaries, a past recipient of the Presidential Award, a past board member of the SOA. Ronald has been an avid volunteer and advocate for the actuarial profession. Outside of work, Ronald enjoys running, writing, and managing his real estate portfolio. Hi, Ronald. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jim. This is great. So great to see you. Thanks for inviting me.
It's so great to have you. Tell us what you are doing right before we started recording this.
That would be running. Yes, I was running. Had a quick run to the park and came back home. Yes.
How many miles do you run, or kilometers? How far do you run each week?
I try for 60 kilometers.
60?
60 a week, yeah. That's what I aim for. If I'm not training for something.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But it's a long distance run. It's people ask how do you, what distance you run. You just run what you can when you can. So sometimes it's 5 kilometers, sometimes 15, 20. You just whatever your day has for you. You try to just run when you can.
That's impressive. I definitely want to circle back to running later.
Yeah.
For now, Ronald, can you give us a flyover journey of your career?
Oh, my career. Okay. I'm an actuary, right? I studied in London, of course. And I would say that I've had quite a lot of roles. I know everybody says that. But of course, I started off life as a chief actuary in a few companies in the Caribbean, basically. And then I came to Brazil. And the roles I took over here were chief financial officer of the Hartford in Brazil. I had another interesting role, which was head of a health insurer. AIG Healthcare divested Brazil, so we took in charge of the portfolio. So I managed that actuarially, technically as well. I've done quite a few startups where I have been the co-pilot, which was Let's Say January in Brazil, which opened in '97. I opened up Munich Re Life in Brazil when the market finally opened after many years of monopoly. I was the head of life, so I had lots of structure around me. And then a real startup was RGA in Brazil. It was me and a coffee machine, in a little WeWork office from nothing. So I've done that as well. So it's quite been very varied as well. Working with large companies, working with small companies, being startup. At one point of my career, even when my company bought AIG Healthcare, I was in charge of the marketing and communications department as well. So it's really a mixed bag.
That's amazing. What do you love about this, being able to do so many different things?
Well, at the end of the day, it seems like a lot, but at the end of the day, the objectives are always clear, which is, to establish an operation, to deliver profits, sustainable profits, of course. Okay. Of course, measuring risk. So at the end of the day, it's almost, they're quite similar, even though they seem so different. And, and delivering results or forecasting results. As I said, looking for opportunities in the market, looking at the landscape, making sure you have competitive advantages, what you're doing. And the most important thing in all of this is building the team, of course. The team is fundamental. Without the team, nothing's gonna happen. And so I see it as that. I see it as that, basically.
So what do you look for when you select a team?
It seems, I guess, blasé to say this thing, but you look for differences, and I want people to be smarter than me And definitely, that's the definite thing. Person has to be smarter
High
than me,
bar.
smarter than me, and whatever if I'm recruiting them for. So if it's an operations guy, they're smarter than me. If it's an HR person, smarter than me. So you have to complement, definitely. You want to learn from people as well. And of course, I really believe in delegating. So of course, certainly people who are obviously engaged, they want to really contribute. They really don't want to just be a number. And basically that's it. Try to create a fun ambiance to work in.
Is there any personal attribute you look for when you build this team?
Um, the main thing, I guess, is being able to work um, by yourself, take decisions. I think the main thing is making decisions. There are people who sometimes just want to escalate everything to the boss to do that thing, and that's for me is everybody's gonna make a mistake. I'm gonna make a mistake, right? So no one's gonna be perfect. So I really think being able to take decisions by yourself, I think that's huge. That's hugely important. And of course, having experience in what you're doing, obviously, right? That's very important. But decision making is very important, and of course, communication is always good to communicate with the rest of the team, what they're doing, and of course, to sort of get input, and that's basically it. Taking decisions by yourself.
Do you how so when you first start working with someone, how long does it typically take before you feel like a reservoir of trust is developed?
That's an interesting question. Um, I guess the first time I get trust is when they come and say we made a mistake. Then I said, finally, then trust is being built now. So I guess that when the person is opening to share, and I said we all make mistakes. The thing is to figure it out. You made a mistake, and this has consequences, and there are big consequences and small consequences, right? Don't sweat the small stuff, right? So I guess the reservoir of trust is certainly has been there when people come forward and start saying, oh yes, you're not discovering mistakes. They're coming forth and telling you, I made a mistake. And let's try to deal with it. So
I like that. Yep, I have definitely made my fair share of mistakes throughout my career. And coming clean or taking responsibility for those is important. Um, Ronald, you have been well, you were in a traditional actual role for a while, but then you kept on creating department, well not department, like creating geographic presence for like Munich Re, RGA, as you mentioned. Was there a mindset shift you had to kind of tweak in order to go from an employee, so to speak, to leading a whole um, unit?
yeah, because not in a little box. As I said, RJ was a good example where you had to try to get the tax code, you had to try to rent offices, you have to install servers locally that has to connect to the United States. That sort of breadth, establish payroll, make sure the company pays its taxes every month, accounting, being in line with regulation, the regulators. Latin America is extremely regulated, probably most of the United States, to give an example. That's very, very important. So I guess like just being an all-rounder and not being afraid and realizing there's so many balls in the air and you really can't let one ball fall. Obviously you can't play soccer without a goalkeeper. That's not going to happen. And it can be a bad goalkeeper, but you need somebody looking at the goal. And so that's basically it. And I guess nobody learns to do these things. I really like to thank my colleagues in the Brazilian insurance market because I really went and spoke to my people who did the same job in other companies. And they were extremely helpful and very open and told me what their issues were and things that keep them up at night. I said, I guess I should be sleeping less because I have these issues as well. So I think that was very important. Networking when you're taking on a new task, and people are much more helpful than you think they are. I guess we're not selling anything, of course. Selling, of course, is when you're selling stuff, people really more competitive. But certainly administratively, I found my colleagues to be extremely generous with their time and expertise in really sharing with me the do's and don'ts.
I recently have the same finding because as you know, I started doing my own thing. I create my own company and launching this podcast. I always assume that if I want someone else's opinion, I need to offer them something. But oftentimes I see people just, like you said, just really generous with their expertise and their connections and their time. Like I'm still not used to that. I still feel like, okay, is there anything I can do for you? Like, should I pay you? Like, what can I do? Um, but maybe I should just accept people's generosity. And I don't know. What do you recommend? Is like, just, is this maybe the essence of relationship building?
Yes, at least for the very least, you should give them a good book recommendation or Netflix series recommendation. That's something. Yeah, but I think that it is interesting that I recently read a book one of my colleagues wrote, Immortal Truth, and it talked about building goodwill, and he says as you're growing as a person, you're building a company. Of course, your company, of course, has assets. Of course, as you know, there's tangible assets, intangible assets. And he said, goodwill is something that you create with, I guess, with friendships, with kindness, being helpful, and it's immeasurable. And that's an asset that will take you through life forever. Even, when you're working, when you stop working, looking for a job, retirement. It really will take you a very long way. And building goodwill, there's so many nuances in it. You just can't pinpoint it to one. But I think going the extra mile, it certainly is there. And especially, as I said, even with competitors, I always thought even educating your competitors is very important, because having someone who is of your competitor that maybe doesn't understand something technically, that's really bad, It's better to educate him or her. And it'll come back to help. You don't know everything. And even the person you're trying to help might be able to teach you something. I think when we leave universities or get to actuarial certificates, that's when the real learning starts.
Wow, that's really powerful. Wow. So what are things that you recommend for someone who want to be really well rounded? Are there specific resources that you recommend, Ronald?
I would say it's a very interesting question. I think reading people you admire, of course, people who have books, obviously, and autobiographies. I think that's very interesting that you realize that true greatness, of course, I mean, you could be reading anything, Napoleon, you could be reading Winston Churchill, of course, Warren Buffett. You realize that there's no plan really, to be honest. There's no plan in these lives of these people. They just go, they try hard, they go to the extra mile. Next thing, they're British Prime Minister. Next thing, they're one of the richest guys in the world, huh? But they realize that they really think that there's no real plan there, and you just have to go out there and try your best every day, and do things you like. I think it's very important. Do things you like. And there's a lot of luck involved as well. But I think it's very important to know, other than luck, really knowing where there's a dead end, and reversing very quickly when you see a dead end, because you can really waste a lot of time. And of course, time is all we have.
How do
So
you know when it's a
biographies.
dead end?
Oh, it's experience, of course. Maybe you see nobody next to you. You're doing something, you realize no one is doing this. Why am I doing this then? I'm really a genius, or I'm seeing a dead end that people have realized before, and I'm not seeing a dead end. So maybe it's
You know,
experience. It's experience at the end. It's experience.
it's experience, intuition from experience that
Yes.
to change course. Um, wow. Ronald, do you remember how we met?
Yes. The factories meetings, of course. Yes.
We did.
Yes. I believe so.
And it's amazing. I realized my recollection is how we met is I reached out to you on LinkedIn because at the time you were the uh, editor for Reinsurance News.
Hmm.
And I wanted to write, I wanted to contribute, and yet I don't know how. So I sent a code message to you on LinkedIn to say, "Hello, Ronald. My name's Jing. Da da da. I would love to write." And you were so encouraging, and you just said, "Okay, show me something. Show me what you wrote. Show me a sample." And I just no, I feel so grateful to your openness, of someone just reaching out to you on LinkedIn. You probably get that all the time to want to participate. And now we're co-editors, and of course with Dirk, who's based in Japan. So I I think to what you said earlier, Ronald, is to do what you like, right? I always wanted to become a writer, and you helped me in becoming more legitimate, I guess, more practice, and become a better writer. So I wanted to check if that was your recollection as well of how we met. But we did meet later on at the SOA meeting. I do remember that. But we connected on LinkedIn first, and it was very much in debt to your kindness that we
Oh,
have this
my
friendship.
yes, I've been involved with the site of Actuary's reinsurance newsletter for over 10 years now. So it's been quite a long time. And I must admit, now you mention it, it rang a bell. Yes. But to be honest, and if anybody's listening to this, really having somebody who wants to volunteer to write is a great thing. And I think even that takes courage. And I really want to recommend, I will always be kind to everybody who contacts me. And I do give feedback sometimes, quite, blunt feedback, regarding writing. And of course, something I look out for a lot is that people are not advertising their company or their services. I think sharing knowledge is very important. And I think that we have this kindred spirit. But certainly, I do give feedback sometimes. And I think if somebody is just writing to sell their company or sell a service, then I do. There is a filter. Yeah, there is a filter.
There
I
is
mean,
a
I'm not saying
filter,
there's a time and place for everything, of course. Don't get me wrong, huh? But as you
right?
know that I've been the editor of the Reinsurance magazine whilst working for leading reinsurers in the world. And it takes a great compliment I get is that I you can't tell who I work for, right? Because you're not seeing a bias of, it could be January, it could be, Munich, it could be RG, you're not seeing a bias there. I think I try really as the editor, not one of the editors, not to show bias for any company. You have to be honest that there are companies who have outstanding publications. We will not name them here, but they are they're reinsurers who really spend a lot of money and have top class writing. But once again, the newsletter we try to put out every couple of months should not be dominated by just one. There'll be no diversity of thought. And to be honest, even as the smaller writers are willing to take more risk sometimes when they're writing, because of course the very large companies, very branded, it has to be of course ticked off by legal compliance communications, of course, signed off, especially if it's listed. Then you have to be wary about your publishing. So it's a nice blend between risk taking and of course the very traditional, well researched articles that the big companies can produce.
Absolutely. Well, you also write as a different moniker called Actuary Out of the Box
Yes.
on Medium platform. Can you tell us where does that name come from, and can you describe the design for folks who are only joining audio through audio?
Okay, so there's a platform called Medium.com. Let's say Barack Obama, he writes on it. It's like YouTube for bloggers. So when you blog, you can go on, of course, if you want to film yourself, go to YouTube, Instagram, of course. But if you want to write, you'll go to medium.com, right? And even, as I said, Barack Obama, he does use Medium quite a lot. And I'm somewhere there in the universe, of course. And, I just find the platform very easy, very, very to log on, to write articles, the formatting. For me, it just works for me. And I fell in love with it and I felt no need to leave the platform since I've been on it. And I do like to write, um, and I think the Society of Actors, I'm very grateful for a lot of things, and the fact that I was on the editorial board of the Actuary magazine, and I had to start writing the editorial introduction, and then of course the newsletter. Whilst I'm waiting for the New Yorker to basically respond to my request to write for them, the Actuarial Society has given me an outlet for my creative writing. So let's see. So I'm very grateful for that. And I'm not a very good blogger, but I'm inspired sometimes when I read a book or I see a movie or something like that, seeing every day, having a conversation. I get inspired sometimes. And then I always try to basically relate that back to actuarial science or back to risk. So I've done things like, Malcolm Gladwell, of course, he's written books. And then how can we use this as risk managers? In fact, the word I don't even like the word risk managers. I prefer risk measurement because it's really difficult to manage a risk. What we should do is measure risks. And I get inspired by something and I write about it. Creativity, mindsets, just to name a few things. The World Economic Forum. I look at how they basically they tabulate risks and they try their best. And so I've read a very lots of variations which inspire me. I think I wish I was a little more disciplined and made sure I blogged every month on something. But so far, sadly, I'm just blogging when the news descends upon me.
Tell us about your best received article, the one you
Oh,
received the most comments.
oh my God, that actually was a big surprise to me. That was the advice I would have liked to receive when I was a 22-year-old actuary. Okay, so of course I'm not 22 anymore. And what advice would I have liked to receive? And that has over 20,000 views, right? Which is quite viral. To be honest, I think that I have an admirer in Asia somewhere, I believe, and then that person gave it to another colleague there. And Asia is a big market, of course, because the numbers are quite staggering. Um, and that's an interesting when I blog because I'm blogging in English, of course. I live in Latin America, in Brazil. I've lived in Argentina and Mexico, so I know my audience is, of course, is not it's out of Brazil, of course. So I have to try to be as global as possible, and that means keeping up to date with trends, with pop culture, even expressions, business models. So that also challenges me as well, to because I'm writing. As I believe that the Asian markets have picked up my article, and they keep circulating it, and hence 20,000 views for my one article.
That's very impressive. Tell us about your the design of actually out of the box.
Oh, okay. My dad, he was basically a graphic design. Was in advertising. He was a bit of a. I remember very very similar to the Madman, the Don Draper type. He was definitely a guy who thought out of the box a lot. He worked for Mac and Erickson in the Caribbean, and he designed it for me. He designed. I don't know how I came up with the idea. It just came out of my mind, actually out of the box. And then a fellow actuary said, "Oh my God, it's a great name." I thought, okay, let's go with it. And it's like a Jack in the Box with a picture of me jumping out of a box, basically with a suit on, the glasses and things, and just like that. It's a fun thing. I think it really captured the spirit. And just another note as well. My dad also designed my first tattoo. Well, I just yeah, actually my second tattoo, which was it's a running emblem. And actually, Runner's World, they have votes for some of the best tattoos in the world, running tattoos, of course. And I'm there in the top 40. They choose 42, I guess, because the 42 kilometers is the marathon. And I've been on the top 42 list. Wow, for like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. My tattoos there. And he did that design as well. So he's very accomplished, advertising, executive. And he just
That's
creates these
amazing.
things. Yeah.
Can you send those to me? Do you have a high resolution version of both the tattoo and the logo? I would love to include that in our cover for the
Okay.
podcast.
I will look around and see what I can find. Definitely.
So speaking of running, not only do you run 60 kilometer per week, just on a casual week, you also train for marathons. So 18 marathons is how many you have done so far?
Yes, 18 so far, yes.
When's your next one? When and where?
That's a good question. I was thinking of Richmond in the States, which is in November, but definitely Paris next year, which is April. I did a marathon already this year, which is the Houston double, early in January. The big marathons are really filling up a lot now. It's really amazing. In one day or in hours, marathons, the big marathons are filled up. So I'm really looking into smaller marathons or not that much. I mean, I can't believe Paris never fills up. Paris is very easy to get into. So
Oh,
for aspiring runners trying to get in a big marathon, Paris is still very easy to get into. So
so there's no lottery system. You just sign
you
up.
get it. Yes, and yeah. Yeah. Strange,
Nice.
but good. Good tip. Tip of the podcast. The Paris Marathon is very easy to get into.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So you had mentioned, so you had a very impressive actuarial career, many leadership roles. And you want to transition now to more of a board of director arena to, I guess, insurance companies, reinsurance companies that can benefit from your expertise. Is that fair?
Yes, that's the plan right now. Yes.
Tell us, you mentioned that you had lived in Brazil now for years, after many other countries in Latin America and others before that. Why Brazil? What attracted you about the country?
That's a very strange thing, very strange answer, I guess. I guess I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, which is very diverse, multicultural, multiracial. And but of course, it's a beautiful country. 1.2 million people. Do consider Brazil to be just an extension of that. It's very similar, right? Of course, São Paulo. I live in São Paulo. Is the financial capital of Latin America. So it's quite like a New York vibe going on here. So it really has the best of both worlds. It's a really very large metropolis, the financial powerhouse of Latin America, but at the same time very similar to Trinidad and Tobago. It is very strange. Of course, they're very similar. You would think it's very different. Even they were colonized by the Portuguese, of course, and then the British and the Spanish in Trinidad. But for me, there's so many parallels. And so it's like being home, but in a really large country.
Do you still have family back home in Trinidad?
Yes, of course, uncles, aunts, sister, nephew, yes.
How often do you go back?
I'm actually planning a trip in November this year. Yes, so I do try to keep on in contact.
Very good. Any other foreseeable trip to the US beside the marathon in Richmond?
Oh, definitely attend the S1E8 Impact Conference this year as well. Yeah,
We're gonna see
definitely.
each other again.
Yes, good.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
yeah.
been what, I want to say 5 years, maybe even longer than that.
It was Nashville, Tennessee S1E8 meeting.
2018 then. Oh, I wish I knew. I'm pretty sure it's 2018. So 6 years.
Yeah,
Wow, I'm so looking forward to seeing you.
yeah. So,
Um, Ronald, for anybody who knows you, I guess I'm using myself as speaking from my experience. You seem like a very high energy person. Do you identify as a high energy person in general?
I guess I do. I've heard it many times already, so I guess I have basically embraced that description of myself. Yes. So I'm a very enthusiastic person, more to the point.
About what? Is there a particular thing or just many things?
Okay, many things. Just curiosity about how things work, why things different. Yeah. The world fascinates me. There's nothing really I can specifically say about it. But and
You're
also,
both.
sorry, no, and I also say I do like to think, for instance, there's depth in things. So let's say I'm reading a new Brazilian author, Machado de Assis. She's amazing Brazilian author. Just read one of his first books. I'm going to read everything. So I'm a bit like that. I'm a bit of like, I like to do deep dives into things as well.
I completely relate to that. If I watched a movie or a film and I like a particular actor, I will go and watch every single thing the person has been in, which can be a very long list, and you just go down a very deep rabbit hole. Um, Ronald, I want to circle back to the high achieving part for a second. You have five designations that I know of. Again, you probably have more. Do you like? Do you feel compelled to be getting things done and achieving things? Like, what part of you drive you to accomplish this impressive list of things that you have already done in your life?
That's an interesting thing. I guess everyone has phases in their lives, and I guess there was a phase that certainly that like you got the British qualification as an actuary, and then of course you got the American qualification because I left London and went to live in Trinidad, and then Puerto Rico, and then Brazil, and I was close to United States, so basically did that qualification. And one of my mentors in life, and I guess I'll put a little plug, you need to have, in my opinion, it's very important to have mentors in your lives. Somebody that will guide you to certainly to at least to have some sort of like a guiding star. And my mentor was one of the first persons that I knew of to do the CFA exam and Chartered Financial Analyst. And hence I did it, right? So as well, I guess it's like what you see, and when you see people around you, and of course, being an actuary, um, much so I think before than now, qualification was very important. I seem to think that now, I mean, look at, let's say, AI, right? Everything, nobody learned AI at university. Maybe now they do, but recently no one's really studied that. And I think we're all learning things by ourselves. A lot of self-learning is going on, which I think is really impressive. Behavioral economics, let's say behavioral economics is another thing. A lot of self-learning going on. AI, a lot of self-learning is going on still. And so I think that's very important. But I think in the generation I belong to, having certificates was like a really important thing. So hence, yes, certificates. Yeah, I think it's a generational thing, to be honest.
I'm a millennial, and I would say it's still important for my generation.
Yeah.
But I completely agree in terms of education. Who said that? Your education only stop when you choose for it to stop, right? It's not about getting. It's not about 12 years of school and then you're done, or getting a certification, you're done. It's about when you would allow yourself to stop learning, because no one else can make you stop unless you choose to accept that yourself. You mentioned mentor, Ronald. How do you choose your mentors, or did it just happen organically?
Organically. I think that's the most important thing. But I think if you're really lost, ask somebody for advice and see how that goes. But it just happened. It's Deborah Jarrow. She's an FSA, and we worked in London together in Towers. And we, of course, a friendship. And then she had more experience than I did. And basically, we've been great friends. Wow, since way back when, 1987, we've been friends. And it just came naturally. It's a natural thing. But I do think it's very important to have Sherpas climbing Mount Everest. We all have Mount Everest in our lives, and to scale Mount Everest without a Sherpa is not definitely not recommended. And yeah, I think it's very important. And of course, you might have different mentors for different things, of course. Okay, and even I think that you want to even have mentors, even without knowing them officially. I mean, like, let's say great writers, as you said, you might write everything, you might read everything somebody has written. And in a way, it's not a personal relationship, but at the same time, you see that person as a guide, and you're trying to,
Yeah.
to emulate his style. I think that's also, but certainly, leveraging other people's experience. Of course, having somebody to talk to is the best. And I'm mentoring somebody right now. He's an actual student in Ghana, and so I think it's important to keep contact with that as well. It's very important. You can learn so much. It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street. Wow, I like that. Ronald, is there anything we're running out of time today? Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would love to share with our audience?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, I guess. I guess let me see. What can I say about that question? What do you do? You can ask what I'm reading right now. I gotta talk about that. I'm actually reading an interesting book, I guess, which is The Power of Habit, right? Which
I
I'm
loved
which I'm
it.
which I'm very surprised at. It's so interesting. It's so interesting. I think it emulates certainly the way I like to write myself. And I always try to read two books, and I'm reading Petty, the biography, Tom Petty, the Heartbreakers him. So yeah, so once I was on one of the actuarial meetings, and one of the actuaries there, um, she was just started talking about how she was biographies or autobiographies of rock stars. I thought that was interesting. And I read a lot about, I read quite a bit about rock stars and their biographies. I find it's so fascinating. So something I remember having a casual conversation, I think we were in Colombia or something, and this topic came up. And I thought, okay. It was Phil Collins, Not Dead Yet. And for me, that's probably one of the best biographies I've written. His autobiography. Phil
Who's that?
Collins. Phil Collins of Genesis.
He
Not Dead
died?
Yet. No, the book is called Not Dead Yet.
Oh.
No, he's fine.
Okay. Phew.
He's fine.
All right, I'll look that up. Thank you for the
So,
recommendation. I also love biographies.
yeah.
What's
So
that?
certainly no. So so I'm reading that right now. I'm reading, basically Tom Petty's book, and I'm reading of course the power of habit. So
Let me
highly
just
recommended.
Okay, I did read it, and I loved it. I will reciprocate with another book related to habit called Atomic Habit. It's by James Clear. He talks about marginal gain.
Wow.
It makes complete sense, obviously, by the way he told it. It's beautiful, right? He had a personal story in there, and it is so things that you can apply right away. So I highly recommend it. That's another book on habit. But yeah, I love the power of habit. He's Charles, right? Charles, his last name. It's escaping me right now. But yeah, it's a very good book.
Yeah.
Thank you for the recommendation for the audience.
There's another strange thing I would like to just mention here, what I do.
Yeah.
I think it's important to be grounded sometimes in life. And one always needs a challenge, right? And right now I'm being really challenged by two things, which keeps me extremely humble, which is finally, in my adult age here, learning how to swim, right? Which is extremely difficult for an adult to do, of course, right? And of course, I do think with the Rubik's Cube as well, right? Trying to get a little faster now and again. And of course, you see very, very young, shall I say children, of course, teenagers, solving at lightning speed. And I think that's an interesting thing as well, to have habits or pastimes that keeps you humble, that makes you strive for more. And I should certainly in the swimming pool and with the Rubik's Cube, I have so far to go. I have a lot to learn.
That's amazing. We're gonna have to try go swimming in National Harbor come November, October. Well, thank you so much, Ronald. I really appreciate your time today, and keep running and keep reading those books and keep sending recommendations.
Thank you so much. It was an utmost pleasure. Great pleasure. Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Be Brilliant with Jing Lang. We hope you found valuable insights and motivation to fuel your journey. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And share this with 3 people in your life endeavoring to achieve personal greatness. Remember, brilliance is within you, and every step you take brings you closer to your best self. Keep striving, keep shining, and until next time, stay brilliant.